You keep losing because you can't read predators, while you preach loyalty and honesty. 3 personality types are studying your weaknesses and deciding how to use you. You were trained to believe that being good makes you safe. It doesn't. It makes you predictable. From childhood, you were conditioned to equate morality with protection. Be honest. Be loyal. Be transparent. Don't manipulate. Don't strategize. Don't calculate. You were taught that power is dirty and purity is noble. That conditioning did not make you virtuous. It made you readable. In competitive environments, business, dating, hierarchy, social circles, predictability is a weakness. When your behavior is governed by rigid moral rules, anyone who is not bound by those rules automatically has a wider range of motion. You operate inside a fenced perimeter. They operate in open terrain. You say what you feel. They say what works. You show loyalty to prove character. They show loyalty to buy time. You assume shared values. They assume leverage. This is the first fracture in your worldview. Morality is not universal. It is positional. When you treat honesty as an absolute, you assume others are playing the same game. But power-based personalities are not playing a moral game. They are playing a strategic one. Their objective is not to be good. It is to win positioning. And you reveal everything. Your frustration, your insecurities, your ambitions, your need to be respected. To you, this is vulnerability. To them, it is data. Every time you over-explain, defend yourself, or seek validation, you broadcast psychological coordinates. You're mapping your own weak points. A manipulative personality doesn't need to attack you. They just wait. They catalogue. They study. Predators in the wild do not chase blindly. They watch patterns. They track routine. They strike where resistance is lowest. Your moral rigidity creates routine. You feel guilty when you withhold information. They feel powerful when they do. You feel anxious when you disappoint someone. They feel strategic when they create that anxiety in others. You try to maintain harmony. They use harmony as camouflage. Goodness, in isolation, is not strength. It is a signal. And signals attract those who know how to read them. This does not mean you must become chaotic or cruel. It means you must understand that moral behavior without strategic awareness is self-sabotage. When you refuse to think in terms of leverage, you become leverage. Look at your past conflicts. The friend who misunderstood you but somehow benefited. The partner who claimed emotional depth but controlled the dynamic. The colleague who smiled publicly and undermined privately. You were confused because you were analyzing the situation through ethics. They were operating through incentives. That is the lens shift. Power-based personalities don't ask, "Is this right?" They ask, "What does this secure?" Security of position, security of influence, security of optionality. You were taught that authenticity builds trust. Sometimes it does, but in predatory environments, authenticity builds a psychological blueprint. The more consistently you react in alignment with your values, the easier it is to forecast your moves. Forecasted men are manageable men. This is why you feel blindsided in conflicts. You assume others think like you. You assume shared emotional rules. You assume that if you are fair, fairness will return. Fairness is not a law. It is a preference. And preferences collapse under pressure. The illusion of goodness is not that morality is useless. It's that morality without awareness is armor made of glass. It looks solid. It shatters on impact. The world does not reward the pure. It rewards the perceptive. If you do not understand how manipulation works, you will continue to mistake it for charisma. If you do not recognize strategic detachment, you will mistake it for confidence. If you do not understand leverage, you will keep offering it freely. This chapter is not telling you to abandon morality. It is telling you to stop worshipping it. Because the moment you believe being a good man is enough, you stop studying the battlefield. And on any battlefield, the unaware are not respected. They are used. The first shift is simple. Stop asking whether you are good. Start asking whether you are positioned. You think manipulation is emotional chaos. It isn't. It is structure. Predatory personalities do not move randomly. They operate on an internal system, an operating system built on 3 pillars: detachment, observation, and positioning. While you react, they calculate. The first pillar is detachment. You attach emotion to outcomes. You want respect. You want loyalty. You want fairness. That desire creates internal pressure, and pressure creates mistakes. The predator removes that pressure. They do not need to be liked. They do not need to be understood. They do not need immediate validation because they are not playing for emotional reward. They are playing for structural advantage. Detachment gives them patience. Patience gives them timing. Timing creates dominance. When someone insults you, you feel heat rise in your chest. You respond to restore dignity. The predator feels the same biological impulse, but they do not obey it. They store it. They wait. They let you reveal more. Emotional restraint is not suppression. It is weaponized delay. Second pillar, observation. You listen to respond. They listen to map. Every conversation is reconnaissance. Every reaction is data. Every insecurity you confess is a coordinate. They notice your tone shifts. They catalog your ambitions. They test your boundaries in small, almost invisible ways. A late reply, a subtle joke at your expense, a broken promise framed as an accident. They are not mistakes. They are probes. If you tolerate small disrespect, they escalate. If you react explosively, they recalibrate. They are constantly adjusting the pressure to find your tolerance threshold. This is why you often feel confused, because their moves are incremental. Strategic personalities understand that humans normalize gradual change. Boiling water does not alarm the frog if the temperature rises slowly. They never attack at full force first. They condition. Third pillar, positioning. You think in moments. They think in leverage chains. Before they confront you, they build alliances. Before they withdraw, they secure alternatives. Before they criticize, they gather witnesses. They are always one layer ahead. You walk into conflict alone. They walk in with silent supporters. You argue facts. They control perception. Power is rarely about truth. It is about narrative control. Whoever defines the story defines the hierarchy. Predators understand this instinctively. If they betray you, they pre-frame it. They subtly question your stability to others. They plant seeds about your overthinking or sensitivity. So, when the rupture happens, you appear reactive. They appear calm. Calm wins socially, even if you are right. The operating system also relies on selective empathy. They can read emotion accurately, but they do not absorb it. They mirror your energy just enough to build trust. They validate you just enough to keep you open. But internally, they remain untouched. You mistake mirroring for connection. It is calibration. You reveal your fears. They nod slowly. You feel seen. In reality, they are measuring where influence can be applied later. The system is efficient because it eliminates unnecessary guilt. Guilt slows execution. If every move must pass through a moral filter, speed decreases. The predator filters through utility, not virtue. Utility is faster. This does not mean they are superhuman. It means they are less internally divided. While you wrestle with should I, they ask only will this strengthen my position. Clarity creates momentum, and momentum intimidates. Understand this clearly. Their advantage is not intelligence alone. It is emotional economy. They waste nothing. Not anger, not praise, not silence. Even silence is a tactic. When they withdraw attention, you feel the loss and chase. When they reward you with approval, you lean closer. They create intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological pattern that makes gambling addictive. Unpredictable reward binds harder than constant reward. They do not overwhelm you with control. They ration it. You think you are making free choices. In reality, the environment was subtly shaped before you acted. This is the operating system. Detachment removes emotional leaks. Observation gathers data. Positioning converts data into leverage. And while you are trying to be understood, they are building structural superiority. The danger is not that these personalities exist. The danger is that you never studied them. Because if you remain unaware of this system, you will continue to interpret strategic behavior as coincidence, charisma, or chemistry. It is none of those. It is design. You don't lose to bad luck. You lose to patterns you never identified. Predatory behavior is not random. It clusters into repeatable archetypes, different faces, same mechanics. If you can name the pattern, you can predict the move. If you cannot, you will continue mistaking strategy for personality. There are 3 dominant types you will encounter repeatedly. 1. The charmer. This one disarms first. He enters environments with warmth calibrated to the room. Confident, articulate, socially fluent. He studies hierarchy instantly: who leads, who follows, who seeks approval. Within minutes, he mirrors the dominant tone. You feel understood around him. That is intentional. The charmer's primary weapon is controlled validation. He gives it selectively. Enough to hook you, never enough to make you independent of it. He compliments your ambition. He laughs at your jokes. He positions himself as an ally. But watch carefully. He never overshares real vulnerability. His disclosures are curated, strategic imperfections designed to humanize him without weakening him. He builds fast rapport because speed creates emotional momentum, and emotional momentum lowers defenses. When conflict arises, he refrains elegantly. He does not confront directly unless he has already secured social backing. If exposed, he pivots. If cornered, he withdraws gracefully and resurfaces later. The charmer wins through perception control. You think he's charismatic. He's calculating. 2. The victim-strategist. This one weaponizes sympathy. Soft-spoken, measured, appears fragile, misunderstood, or unlucky. You instinctively lower your guard because he does not present as a threat. That is the camouflage. The victim-strategist gathers protection by positioning himself as emotionally disadvantaged. He shares selective hardships. He frames past conflicts as betrayals against him. He never fully attacks someone he implies. Implication is powerful. It allows others to draw conclusions while he maintains innocence. When tension arises, he retreats into hurt. He sighs, he looks wounded. Suddenly, you feel aggressive for even questioning him. That reversal is the tactic. You begin defending yourself instead of examining his behavior. He creates moral pressure. If you challenge him, you appear cruel. If you distance yourself, you appear cold. So you compensate. You give more reassurance, more patience, more benefit of the doubt. While you overextend, he studies. The victim-strategist thrives in environments that reward emotional sensitivity. He understands that modern social dynamics punish perceived harshness. He uses that cultural leverage to insulate himself. He rarely dominates openly. He erodes quietly. 3. The silent observer. This one speaks least. He watches. Where the charmer builds visibility and the victim-strategist builds sympathy. The silent observer builds information dominance. He asks minimal questions but remembers everything. He notices who interrupts, who seeks approval, who overreacts. Silence makes others uncomfortable. Most men fill silence with confession. The silent observer lets you talk until you reveal your blueprint. He does not rush hierarchy. He studies it. He waits for fractures. When two allies conflict, he does not intervene emotionally. He positions himself as stable. Stability attracts trust. Over time, he becomes the quiet center of gravity. Decisions begin flowing through him not because he demanded authority, but because he appears least volatile. When he finally moves, it is precise. No drama, no warning, just repositioning. You rarely see him coming because he never needed attention. These 3 archetypes often overlap. A skilled operator may shift between them depending on environment. Charm in public, victimhood under scrutiny, silence when gathering leverage. Flexibility increases survivability. You must understand something critical. None of these types think of themselves as villains. They believe they are adaptive, strategic, realistic, in competitive systems. Traits that secure advantage feel justified, and the world often rewards them. You, meanwhile, stay consistent, transparent, predictable. Consistency is honorable, but in power games, consistency without awareness is exposure. If you can identify which archetype you are dealing with, you regain predictive power. If you cannot, you will continue reacting instead of positioning, and reaction is always one step behind design. You keep asking why integrity isn't enough, because integrity does not control outcomes. Strategy does. History does not remember the pure, it remembers the positioned. Look at power structures across time kingdoms, corporations, political movements, criminal networks. The individuals who rose were rarely the most moral. They were the most adaptive, the most perceptive, the least emotionally exposed. Selection does not reward goodness, it rewards effectiveness. In evolutionary terms, survival favored those who could read threat early, conceal intent, and strike with precision. The tribe member who trusted blindly was removed. The one who anticipated betrayal endured. That wiring never disappeared. Modern society wraps competition in polite language networking, collaboration, leadership, but the mechanics are ancient. Status is finite. Resources are finite. Influence is finite. And wherever something is finite, strategy emerges. You assume people operate from conscience. Strategic personalities operate from incentive. This is why they appear calm during conflict. You interpret calmness as maturity. Often, it is simply emotional insulation. They are not destabilized because they are not emotionally invested in the same way you are. You argue from principle. They maneuver from position. Principles do not intimidate anyone who does not share them. Consider corporate environments. The man who openly criticizes unfair policy is labeled difficult. The one who quietly builds alliances before speaking is labeled strategic. Both may want change. Only one survives the backlash. Perception outranks intention. And predators understand perception better than moralists. They know that most people are not analyzing truth, they are reacting to tone, confidence, and social proof. So they build social proof first. They align themselves with perceived authority. They project certainty even when uncertain. Confidence shapes narrative. Narrative shapes consensus. Once consensus forms, truth becomes secondary. This is how reputations are dismantled without evidence. This is how alliances shift overnight. This is how someone you trusted suddenly finds themselves isolated. Strategic personalities play the long game. They understand delayed gratification. While you seek immediate fairness, they invest in future leverage. They tolerate short-term discomfort for long-term dominance. You, on the other hand, often react to restore emotional equilibrium quickly. You confront early. You demand clarity. You push for resolution. Resolution is not always power. Sometimes ambiguity is. Ambiguity allows repositioning. It allows information gathering. It allows alliances to solidify quietly. Look at social dynamics in dating. The man who overcommits early, who expresses deep loyalty before testing character, becomes predictable. The charmer withholds just enough certainty to remain intriguing. The victim-strategist shares selective pain to trigger protection. The silent observer studies patterns before investing. Who retains control of pacing? Control of pacing is control of attachment. Attachment creates vulnerability. Vulnerability without awareness creates dependency. Dependency creates leverage. This is not cynicism. It is structural reality. Even in friendships, subtle hierarchies form. The one who needs approval most becomes the most cautious. The one least afraid to withdraw becomes the gravitational center. Fear of loss determines rank. Predatory personalities reduce visible fear. They signal optionality. Whether real or exaggerated, optionality increases perceived value. The one who can leave appears powerful. The one who cannot appears negotiable. You may resist this framework because it feels harsh, but harsh systems produce harsh truths. Competitive environments do not distribute outcomes based on moral scorecards. They distribute outcomes based on strategic advantage. And here is the uncomfortable part. These personalities often win not because they are evil but because they understand human nature. Without romantic filters, humans respond to confidence. Humans follow perceived stability. Humans avoid those who create friction. If you confront poorly positioned, you become friction. If you position first, you become stability. The predator's edge is not constant aggression. It is calibrated restraint. They do not waste energy proving themselves. They let others prove themselves useful. Utility decides proximity. This is why you sometimes feel like you are too real for the world. It's not that you are too real. It's that you are too exposed in systems that reward containment. The battlefield did not disappear. It evolved. And in evolved battlefields, overt violence is replaced with psychological maneuvering. Reputation replaces weapons. Narrative replaces force. Silence replaces shouting. The ones who understand this adapt. The ones who don't call it unfair. Fairness does not determine winners. Position does. Now you stop reacting. Now you reposition. Understanding predators is useless if you still behave like prey. Awareness without behavioral shift only sharpens your frustration. This chapter is not about becoming ruthless. It is about becoming structurally untouchable. First principle: reduce emotional leakage. Every visible overreaction is leverage handed out for free. When insulted, do not rush to defend. When praised, do not glow. When challenged, do not explain excessively. Emotional spikes reveal attachment points. Attachment points reveal pressure points. Controlled neutrality unsettles manipulators. They test to measure reaction. If reaction is minimal and unreadable, calibration becomes difficult. You introduce uncertainty into their model of you. Uncertainty is defensive armor. Second principle: control information flow. You do not owe full transparency to everyone in your proximity. Over-disclosure is a modern weakness disguised as authenticity. Speak in layers: surface layer, neutral facts; middle layer, selective perspective; core layer, reserved. Not everyone qualifies for access to your core layer. Qualification must be earned through time, consistency, and reciprocal exposure. When you reveal everything quickly, you collapse the power gradient. Mystery is not manipulation. It is boundary enforcement. Predators thrive on data density. Reduce what they can map. Third principle: delay commitment. Fast emotional investment creates asymmetry. The one who commits first usually concedes leverage, whether in business, friendship, or dating. Control pacing. If someone pushes for rapid closeness, question the urgency. Urgency often benefits the initiator. Time exposes patterns. Predatory personalities prefer compressed timelines because compression limits scrutiny. Expand the timeline. Observe consistency under boredom, not just intensity. Fourth principle: build parallel options. Dependency is vulnerability. If one social circle defines your identity, you are fragile. If one income stream defines your security, you are controllable. If one relationship defines your emotional stability, you are negotiable. Optionality creates quiet confidence. You do not threaten to leave. You simply can. And that subtle difference changes your posture. Fifth principle: separate emotion from decision. Feel fully. Decide slowly. When anger hits, wait. When attraction spikes, wait. When admiration rises, wait. Emotional states distort risk assessment. Strategic men install delay between impulse and action. That delay is where power accumulates. Sixth principle: master selective silence. Silence is not weakness. It is informational bait. When someone attempts to provoke you, do not rush to fill the space. Let them expand. People exposed to silence often reveal more than intended. They justify. They over-explain. They contradict themselves. You gather clarity without revealing position. Seventh principle: calibrated confrontation. Do not confront publicly unless the positioning is secured. Public confrontation without alliance backing can isolate you. Private correction maintains structure without ego war. If confrontation is necessary, keep it brief, controlled, specific. No emotional speeches. Emotion invites counterattack. Precision limits it. Eighth principle: observe how they treat the powerless. This is the fastest diagnostic tool. How someone treats waiters, subordinates, or those with no leverage reveals their hierarchy instinct. The charmer may perform kindness publicly but shift tone privately. The victim-strategist may subtly undermine those beneath him to maintain sympathy. The silent observer may test boundaries quietly. Watch downward behavior. It predicts upward betrayal. Ninth principle: do not compete for validation. Approval-seeking lowers your perceived value. When you subtly chase affirmation, you communicate insecurity. Insecurity invites control. Speak less about what you deserve. Demonstrate standards through action. Withdraw attention from those who cross boundaries. Instead of negotiating endlessly, attention is currency. Spend it deliberately. 10th principle: redefine strength internally. Strength is not loud dominance. It is internal sovereignty, the ability to remain centered when others attempt to shift your state. If someone can trigger you at will, they partially control you. Your goal is not to intimidate. It is to become unhookable. When you cannot be easily flattered, guilted, rushed, or provoked, manipulators lose efficiency. They prefer easier terrain. Remember, predators conserve energy. If you become high effort to control, they redirect elsewhere. Counterpositioning is not aggression. It is quiet restructuring of your behaviors so that exploitation becomes expensive. You do not need to out-manipulate. You need to out-discipline. Because the ultimate defense against strategic personalities is not paranoia. It is composure. The hardest opponent you will ever face is not the charmer, not the victim-strategist, not the silent observer. It is the version of you that wants to be liked. That version must die, not physically, not socially, structurally. Your naive identity was built on approval loops. You believed that if you were honest enough, loyal enough, patient enough, security would follow. You confused moral effort with strategic strength. That identity seeks harmony over hierarchy. It seeks validation over positioning. It seeks fairness over leverage. And because of that, it is negotiable. The naive self over-explains, over-forgives, over-invests, It believes clarity solves manipulation. It believes transparency disarms predators. It believes being the bigger person earns respect. Respect is not granted for moral endurance. It is granted for boundaries enforced without apology. To replace the naive self, you must first recognize its internal scripts. Script 1. If I show them I'm genuine, they'll treat me right. No, they will measure you. Script 2. If I confront emotionally, they'll understand. No, they will assess your volatility. Script 3. If I stay loyal, they'll reciprocate. No, they will calculate your dependency. The naive self assumes mutual conscience. Strategic personalities assume asymmetric incentive. This is the fracture point. Identity death begins when you stop expecting others to operate by your internal code. You keep your code, but you stop projecting it outward. You do not abandon morality. You detach morality from expectation. That detachment is transformation. The new identity operates differently. He does not chase reassurance. He does not broadcast insecurity. He does not rush intimacy. He observes first. He invests proportionally. He withholds reaction until assessment is complete. Emotion still exists, but it no longer dictates exposure. The naive self equated openness with strength. The sovereign self understands calibrated access is strength. Access must be earned. You will feel resistance during this shift, a subtle discomfort. It will feel like becoming colder, more distant, less expressive. That discomfort is withdrawal from dependency. You were conditioned to equate availability with virtue, to always respond, to always clarify, to always reassure. Now you install delay. Now you install silence. Now you install standards that do not bend under guilt pressure. This is not cruelty. It is structural integrity. The naive self needed to be chosen. The sovereign self chooses. That difference changes posture, tone, pacing. When you no longer fear disapproval, your body language shifts. When you no longer chase validation, your speech slows. When you no longer overcommit, your presence stabilizes. Stability is magnetic, because most men are still operating from need. Need is visible. It leaks through micro-expressions, through text timing, through tone shifts. Strategic personalities scan for need the way predators scan for limps in a herd. Remove visible need. You do this not by suppressing desire but by diversifying identity. Multiple sources of purpose, multiple domains of competence, multiple social anchors. When one arena destabilizes, you do not collapse. This is sovereignty. Sovereignty is internal independence from external volatility. The naive self outsourced emotional equilibrium to others. The sovereign self internalizes it. When insulted, he evaluates. When praised, he filters. When tempted, he pauses. He is slower but stronger. You will lose some people during this transition. Those who benefited from your predictability will feel the shift. They may call you distant, different, changed. Correct. Evolution always looks like betrayal to those invested in your weakness. Identity death is not dramatic. It is quiet subtraction. Less explaining, less chasing, less proving, more observing, more positioning, more controlled movement. You are not becoming heartless. You are becoming unreadable. And unreadable men are difficult to manipulate. The naive self wanted to be understood. The sovereign self wants to remain unexploited. One seeks connection at any cost. The other selects connection at calculated cost. Choose carefully which one survives. There is no neutral ground. You either understand power dynamics or you become part of someone else's structure. Most men drift. They consume information. They feel briefly empowered. Then they return to default behavior. Default behavior is predictable. Predictable men are easy to categorize. Categorized men are easy to manage. This is the final filter, selection. Not everyone who hears this message will evolve. Some will nod in agreement and continue oversharing. Some will recognize manipulation and still crave validation. Some will attempt temporary discipline and relapse under emotional pressure. Pressure reveals identity. When confronted with tension, disapproval, attraction, opportunity, your old wiring will try to reassert control. It will whisper, explain yourself, prove your loyalty, chase clarity, fix the tension. That whisper is elimination, because every time you obey it, you re-enter the herd. Strategic personalities do not need to destroy you. They only need you to self-expose. The world silently categorizes men into two groups, those who can be influenced, and those who require negotiation. If you react predictably, you will be influenced. If you remain composed and selective, you require negotiation. Negotiated men are respected. Influenced men are rotated. This is visible in every domain. In business, the man desperate for the deal concedes terms. The one willing to walk away reshapes them. In dating, the man afraid to lose overinvests. The one with options sets pace. In social hierarchies, the man who fears exclusion tolerates subtle disrespect. The one indifferent to approval enforces boundaries without speech. Fear determines rank. You eliminate fear by eliminating dependency. Dependency on approval. Dependency on constant connection. Dependency on external validation to confirm your worth. When validation is optional, behavior stabilizes. When behavior stabilizes, perception shifts. When perception shifts, hierarchy adjusts. But understand this, sovereignty has a cost. You will not be universally liked. You will not be emotionally accessible to everyone. You will not be easily categorized. Some will call you distant. Some will call you intense. Some will test you harder. Good. Tests refine structure. The goal is not isolation. The goal is selective alliance. You choose who receives access. You choose who receives loyalty. You choose who receives emotional depth. Choice is power. Selection is discipline. If you refuse to evolve, elimination is subtle. It looks like stagnation, repeated betrayal, repeated confusion, repeated frustration and outcomes that shouldn't happen. Patterns are not accidents. If the same dynamic repeats in your life, you are signaling something consistent. Predators detect patterns faster than you detect them in yourself. Break the pattern or remain predictable. There is no final warning beyond this. The world does not reward awareness. It rewards integration. If you understand manipulation but still leak emotion, you are still vulnerable. If you recognize archetypes but still rush commitment, you are still exposed. If you value sovereignty but fear disapproval, you are still negotiable. Integration means your posture changes, your pacing changes, your reactions slow, your words reduce, your standards rise quietly. No announcements, no dramatic speeches, no moral superiority, just calibrated behavior. You do not need to dominate rooms. You need to stop being influenced by them. This is the divide. Men who require constant reassurance will always orbit those who withhold it. Men who fear loss will always cling to those who signal optionality. Men who cannot detach will always be tested by those who can. Selection or elimination. You either become structurally difficult to manipulate, or you remain convenient. There is no middle tier. Decide which category you occupy, and adjust accordingly.